We are returning to breaking news that President Trump says he is removing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Here's what I want you to know. This is the first time in 112 years that a U.S. president has moved to force out a Fed governor. The independence of the Federal Reserve has been a key element of American exceptionalism for over a century. And in one single social media post, President Trump may have kicked that to the curb tonight. And his cause to fire a Fed governor? An allegation of mortgage fraud made by a member of the Trump administration, Bill Pulte, who oversees mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We now have a statement from Lisa Cook that reads in part the following. President Trump purported to fire me for cause when no cause exists under the law, and he has no authority to do so. I will not resign. I will continue to carry out my duties to help the American economy as I have been doing since 2022, end quote. Now, this allegation and the attempt to remove Cook clearly raises the question of the president's real motivation. Is it to push out Biden appointees and phase in those with loyalty to President Trump? Well, given his frustration with the Fed chair, it's a possibility. But it's also important to remember the committee that sets interest rates has 12 members. 7 of them are Fed governors appointed by the president, like Lisa Cook, but the other 5 members are heads of regional Fed banks. The president does not get to appoint them. But either way, we're already seeing an impact in the markets since the president's announcement. The U.S. dollar dropped on the news, weakening against other major currencies. With me now to discuss, Natasha Stern, former Treasury official and Yale Law professor, and Brendan Greeley, contributing editor for the Financial Times. Natasha, what is your reaction to the news?
You know, I am really, really disheartened and disappointed to see the politicization of the Federal Reserve. I think, and you got to it in your intro, Steph, we're in a situation where the independence of the central bank is such a critical national asset and such a key pillar of our economic security that it's been really hard to watch over the course of the last many months, the president and this administration try to interfere in the monetary policy function of the Federal Reserve. And I'm worried, frankly, about the signal that this sends about our economic strength. And I think you're starting to see that the market is worried as well.
Brendan, you've actually been writing a 500-year history of the dollar. It's like the new 50 Shades of Grey, Brendan Greeley style. How is this news going to change this last chapter of your book? 500 years of the dollar?
It's been driving me crazy. I keep having to rewrite the last chapter of the book as he makes various threats towards Fed independence. Look, the challenge, as you pointed out, is the Federal Open Market Committee actually sets interest rates. And you're absolutely right. The regional Fed governors have a vote on that. It's very unlikely that all of a sudden we're going to get incredibly low interest rates to make Donald Trump happy. Even the Trump appointees, Michelle Bowman and Christopher Waller, are sort of reasonably decent economists who've done responsible things at the Fed. However, the Board of Governors itself, if he gets a majority on the Board of Governors, does a lot of really important work that we never see. They take care of payments. The original, if we're going to go back to the history of the Fed, the original goal of the Fed was to make sure that dollar bills, banknotes could actually make it into the hands of people who needed them during a financial crisis. So one thing that you never see is that the Fed has got 28 depots securely located around the country. And every time you go to an ATM to get a dollar out of the ATM, a truck has driven with that dollar from one of those depots. So that's cash services. They also manage payments, transfers among banks. There's a lot of really dense technical work that the Fed does. And if he successfully removes Lisa Cook, then what she's going to be replaced with is somebody who's not competent. And we're going to see a slow erosion of competence at the Fed, which is crucial to the way the economy works in all sorts of ways we're never going to see until it all falls apart. I think the other message this sends is everybody else at the Fed knows that he can do this to anyone at any time. So the chilling effect that this is going to have on Fed independence when they actually give public speeches, whatever they say in private that is then reported out as the Fed minutes weeks later. All of this stuff they now know that the White House is going to watch it and patrol it, and they're going to find dirt on everybody else at the Board of Governors.
Well, let's just talk politics for a moment then, Natasha, because if the president gets his way and rates are lowered, it could cause inflation to spike. And spiked inflation is one of the main drivers that hurt Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
You know, it's kind of all stunning to watch because we're in a situation where the president walked into the administration with an economy that was strong and with inflation coming down towards its 2% inflation target. And now we're in a situation where, as a result of the most inflationary policies that we've seen in our lifetimes through this trade war, inflation is ticking back up. And if the administration wants to see interest rates lower, there's like a very clear thing that they have full control over that they can do. And it has nothing to do with central bank independence. It really involves rolling back those sets of policies in ways that would counteract the inflation that we've set out. And so I'm just a little bit, again, puzzled by why the reaction isn't let's rethink some of the economic policy, and instead it's let's potentially squander this critical national asset that is the independence of the central bank.
All right, new topic, an astonishing one, another astonishing one. An intervention by this administration, right? Not during any sort of economic crisis. The government announced that they are taking a 10% stake in Intel. And Trump's economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, said, get used to it. This could be part of a broader strategy to create a sovereign wealth fund. Brendan, can you walk us through this? Because if the government is now taking stakes in private businesses when we are not in any time of crisis, right? We saw this happen for a period of time during the financial crisis with financial firms. But yes, Intel's stock is way down. The company has not been doing well compared to its rivals. But are you serious? Our government during bullish times is now going to own a piece of a corporation? How's this going to work?
Yeah, but it's really important, the question you just asked, how this went down. We have to walk back through how it actually happened. He invited the CEO of a publicly listed company to the White House and then shook him down for a stake in the company. This was not a question where...
Brennan, after he said the guy was unfit to run the company and should be fired.
Yes. Sorry. So many details to keep track of. So many horrific details. Look, so this is not a case of the company coming to the government and saying, hey, look, we need to expand, or we're important for national security, or this is something that we need to run the broader economy. How can we work with you as part of a broader subsidization process? None of that happened. The president invited a CEO to the White House and shook him down for a 10% stake for free. And so, I mean, the consequences of that are one of the most important engines of the American economy, and I wish this weren't so, but it is so, is America's capital markets. People come here to be listed. Companies come here to be listed because we have the rule of law, because we have deep and liquid capital markets, because we have financial expertise here, and we have a lot of capital. It's a really good place to get financing for your company. Why would any company continue to do that when at any point the government can shake you down for 10%?
Okay, Natasha, I get it. It's critically important that we make chips here. That is what Intel does. So maybe on some level there are benefits. But politically speaking, you've got the Republican Party. You've got Wall Street going absolutely ballistic in New York, that you've got a mayoral candidate in Mamdani who suggests maybe we have a few grocery stores that are government run. That is sending Wall Street and Republicans to the hills, screaming and yelling and losing their minds. But this, the federal government taking a stake in Intel, that seems normal?
Yeah, and you know, as sort of an economist, if we step back and pull back a little to understand what's going on here, something that I find really important, and it relates to this conversation we were having about the Federal Reserve as a critical engine of our economic security, is another like really important pillar of our economic security is the idea that we are in a rules-based capitalist system. And what I'm worried about, you can make an argument around national security and chips and Intel specifically. The thing that's worrying, though, is what we're seeing is this is one piece of a broader puzzle where we're also talking about shaking down Nippon Steel. We're also talking about conversations with respect to particular law firms and the terms by which they're going to have access to federal buildings. And so it all seems to be part of a move away from this rules-based capital system. And that comes comes at, again, real risks to our economic security that aren't short-term risks that are going to immediately be rolled back when we have another administration or another set of policies. These are long-term consequences that I'm really quite concerned with.